What happens to one's individuality after he or she attains the ultimate moksha or enlightenment? The word enlightenment we find mostly in the Advaita Vedanta, while the word Nirvana is generally associated with Buddhism. The word enlightenment is also there in Buddhism, in the Buddhist system of spirituality. The word Nirvana literally means extinguished, like the candle or the fire. As we say that the flame of the candle or the fire has been extinguished. Whereas from the Buddhist point of view, the word for enlightenment can be called as Bodhi. The word Bodhi has been translated in various ways into English, sometimes as enlightenment, sometimes as awakening, sometimes as supreme knowledge. So we can see that there is a difference in emphasis between extinguishment and awakening, or extinguishment and enlightening. In Buddhism, it is the experience of or access to Nirvana that produces Bodhi or enlightenment. Now let's analyze the post-death existence first, and only after that discussing the idea of individuality can begin. Here by death I mean to say the death of the physical or material body. What does Advaita Vedanta say on this issue? Okay? In the Bhagavad Gita, we find in the 13th slok of the second chapter, we find Krishna telling Arjuna, Dehi nahasminnatha dehe kaumarang jovanang jara tatha dehantara praptir dhirjas tatra na mujjhati. What does it mean? It means that just as the embodied being passes through childhood, youth, and ultimately old age in the physical body, in the same way, the soul also passes into another body at death. And a wise person isn't bewildered by such a change. Let's describe the gross physical body as Sthula Sharir, and that another body into which the soul enters after death as Sukha Sharir, or the subtle body. So, when one dies a physical death, his or her soul leaves this physical body or Sthula Sharir he has inhabited so far and enters another body, another subtle body, or the Sukha Sharir. When in the physical body, the indwelling being remains unchanged, while the body or the Sthula Sharir that it inhabits grows, ages, and eventually dies. After the death of the physical body, the indwelling being gets associated with another body, and this another body or the subtle body or the Sukha Sharir after the death of the physical body is destined by the laws of what you call karma. So far, so good. Okay? Can you understand? Okay. Now, what actually is this transmigrating entity which travels from Sthula Sharir to Sukha Sharir and awaits for another Sthula Sharir to occupy according to one's karma? Who is it that gets reborn? The ancient rishis describes this transmigrating entity as Atma. or Atta. Okay. Now, what does the ancient rishis exactly mean by the word Atta or Atma? We find in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad the rishis describing the word Atma as Eko Deva Sarvabhuteshi Gura Sarvabhyapi Sarvabhutantaratma Karmadhaksha Sarvabhutadhivasha Shakhi Cheta Kevalo Nirgunascha. Understand? This is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The word Deva here actually literally means one who provides or one who shines or one who is glorious. That's why this word Deva is often used to describe God. But here the word Deva refers to the one who shines as consciousness, the consciousness within you, the consciousness that illumines your mind and reveals your thoughts, your emotions, your memories. Advaita Vedanta interprets this slok where it is said, Eko Deva, as there is but one shining consciousness, which is Gura. That means that it is hidden, and it is also Sarvabhuteshu, that is in all beings. Okay? According to this verse, Atma is Sarvabhyapi, that is all pervasive. It also says that Atma is Sarvabhutantaratma, which means that the Antaratma or the inner self of Sarvabhuta or all beings are one. Okay? Now, putting this all together, the Upanishad defines Atma as the one, all pervasive consciousness, that is the inner self which dwells in all beings. Now, if the Atma is one and the same Atma dwells in all beings, then how are we different, and how does one particular Atma, with all his or her individuality, travels from one Sthula Sharir to another Sukha Sharir, and then again into another Sthula Sharir, and reincarnates? Okay? There's another problem. If the Atma is all pervasive, then it means it's everywhere, and then how can it travel when it is everywhere? It doesn't make any sense, no? These problems were the reason behind the birth of the Dvaita philosophy of Vedanta, like the philosophies of, say, Madhavacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Vallabhacharya, etc., where the Jivatma is seen to travel from the Martolok to, say, what they call it? Vaikunthalok. But the Advaita Vedanta has a different take on this issue. According to Advaita Vedanta, the rishis didn't refer to Atma as the entity that leaves the body at death and travels on to a new one, but they described Atma to mean the one all-pervasive consciousness that dwells in all beings. Here the word Atma leads to a lot of confusion, because the word Atma is often used to refer to that transmigratory entity instead of the one all-pervasive consciousness. If we stick to the meaning of Atma as prescribed by the rishis, then it can't be the transmigratory entity which travels. Then the question naturally arises, who or what is it that travels? Often we use the English word soul in this context. It can be loosely said that the soul travels, but the word soul can also cause confusion because the different religions of the world attach a different concept with the word soul. So, Instead of using the word soul, I would like to use the word Shukkha Sharir or the subtle body. Okay? I have already used the word Shukkha Sharir. Now, every object also has Sthula and Shukkha attributes. Every object we see and find also has Sthula and Shukkha attributes attached to it. For example, say a flower is Sthula, but the happiness one derives from looking at the flower or smelling it is Shukkha. Okay? Your brain is Sthula, but your emotions and memories are Shukkha. The Sthula objects are physical objects which can be measured or weighed. But Shukkha objects are, say, non-physical and they can't be quantified. Okay? Human brain weighs roughly 2.5 pounds, but you can never measure your thoughts and memories. The Shukkha Bostu exists, but not as physical objects, but as Shukkha Bostu. The Shukkha Sharir inhabits your Sthula Sharir and endows the Sthula Sharir with life and sentiency. Without the Shukkha Sharir, the Sthula Sharir is nothing but a lifeless corpse or just a dead body. Similar to the Sthula Sharir, the Shukkha Sharir also has parts such as eyes and ears and etc. The Shukkha Sharir comes to prominence when you are dreaming, while you are in dream, and thus you can experience or see so many things even with your eyes closed. It is during the dream phase the presence of the Shukkha Sharir we can feel. At this moment, I would request you all to think what my Thakur has spoken in that wonderful narrative about the post-death scenario in his speech of 2nd September 1985. What Thakur says? You will find there Thakur saying, বিবেচনা রইল, দর্শন রইল, স্পর্শন রইল, স্বাদ রইল, ধ্বনি রইল, দিয়ে চাবি মেরে দিয়ে বডিটাকে ফেলে দিয়ে ছেড়ে দাও। এটাই আত্মা। What does it mean? You take all the sense organs and along with it vivechana or the power of discrimination and the accumulation of all this is what is Atta or the Shukkha Sharir as I have mentioned here. What Thakur says? You will find there Thakur saying, বিবেচনা রইল, দর্শন রইল, স্পর্শন রইল, স্বাদ রইল, ধ্বনি রইল, দিয়ে চাবি মেরে দিয়ে বডিটাকে ফেলে দিয়ে ছেড়ে দাও। এটাই আত্মা। What does it mean? You take all the sense organs and along with it vivechana or the power of discrimination and the accumulation of all this is what is Atta or the Shukkha Sharir as I have mentioned here. In order to facilitate this discussion, I am here using the word Shukkha Sharir instead of Atma. I am here trying to move much deeper to decipher the true nature of Atma. Okay? Another important aspect of Shukkha Sharir, which my Thakur has often mentioned, is that it is like the essence or aroma of a flower. My Thakur says that ফুলটা পড়ে থাকে, গন্ধটা ছড়িয়ে যায়। ঠিক একইভাবে মৃত্যুর পর দেহটা পড়ে থাকে আর ফুলের সুবাসের মতো আত্মাটা বেরিয়ে যায়। Thakur has often said this. In similar fashion, in the Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna telling Arjuna in the 8th verse of the 15th chapter, Sharirang jadobapnoti jachaput kramotishara grihittoitani sanjati vayurgandha nibashayat. what Krishna says in this slok. Like a king rules over his palace, the Sukha Sharir rules over the gross physical body or the Sthula Sharir, and at the time of death, that is Utkramati, that is, it leaves the physical body, taking along with it all the properties of pran, like gandhan or fragrance, which is blown by Vayu or the wind. Krishna describes it as Vayur Gandha Nibashayat. Look, Thakur has also said similar things. Okay? Now let's dive deeper and discuss the relationship between Sukha Sharir, which travels, and the Atma, which doesn't travel. Here let's find what Advaita Vedantins like Shankaracharya says on this issue. The Advaita Vedantins uses this metaphor of the sun shining on a container of water. The sun shines down on everything, It shines down on everything below, including the container of water. They look at the sun as the one shining consciousness that pervades all. The container is the Sthula Sharir, and the water in the container represents the Sukha Sharir. The container filled with water reflects the sun. The container all alone, only by itself, can't reflect the sun. It needs the water to reflect the sun. That describes how a physical body or Sthula Sharir exhibits life, the consciousness, because it has the Sukha Sharir inside it. If now there are several containers, then you will be able to see several reflections of the same sun. According to Advaita Vedanta, there are innumerable conscious beings in the world, even though there is but one source of consciousness, which they call Atma. Advaita Vedantins describes this situation as there is but one Paramatma, one supreme or universal consciousness, whereas there are many Jivatmas or many individual conscious beings in the world. Okay? They say that there is only one Paramatma and all we are Jivatmas. Okay? Now, it is obvious that the presence of water in the container has allowed the reflection of the sun. In the same way, it's the presence of the Sukha Sharir which allows the physical body or the Sthula Sharir to enjoy what we call life and experience life. As long as the Sukha Sharir continues to dwell in the Sthula Sharir, you continue to experience the world through your physical body or Sthula Sharir. Now, to understand reincarnation or rebirth, let us get back to the example of the container filled with water. Suppose this container gets old. The material out of which the container has been made of is in a dilapidated condition. Several leaks and cracks have appeared on it, and we have tried our best to plug them in so that the container can continue to hold water. That's similar to we getting old and several diseases appearing in our physical body or Sthula Sharir. Doesn't it? I have compared here the container with our physical body. Eventually, the container gets so old and broken that it's impossible to prevent water from draining out of the container. This obviously represents the death of the container, that is the Sthula Sharir. Now, when the container is empty, it no longer can reflect sun because there's no water. That's why reflection of the consciousness comes to an end when the Sukha Sharir leaves the Sthula Sharir. Now, the water that has been leaked out from the old container can be collected and poured into a new bucket, and it then starts reflecting the sun. This is what reincarnation is all about. Understand? From the old container to a new one. The same water. Here, the unwise will find a new sun appearing on the new bucket, but the wise knows that it is the same sun being reflected on this new bucket with the same water, which earlier was being reflected by the water in the old container, and this is how the cycle of births and deaths goes on. Now, is there any final end to this all transmigration processes? And I mean to say, where does all these mechanisms of nature ultimately lead us to? This is where the concepts of Nirvana and Enlightenment come into play. According to Buddhism, there's an ultimate end to all this in the attainment of Nirvana. As Shiva Baba Prana has asked whether individuality is maintained in this exalted stage of Nirvana, we will find that Buddha remains silent on this question. This question of maintaining individuality, such an important and profound question, the Buddhists say isn't relevant. Now let's see what the Advaita Vedantins say on this issue of maintenance of individual identity at the highest stage of enlightenment. We find them saying that at this stage of enlightenment, there's no question of maintaining one's individuality after enlightenment, because your current conception of individuality, according to the Advaita Vedantins, is already wrong, and it's due to what they call Maya. Okay? According to the Advaita Vedantins, there's nothing like Jivatma merging into the ocean of Paramatma, because you are already Param Brahma, and the reason you are not aware of it is due to ignorance, or what they call Maya. Though Shankaracharya himself has often used the metaphor of a raindrop falling into the ocean and being one with the ocean, but the Advaita Vedantins strictly don't see the existence of any individuality after one is enlightened. Now let's see what my Thakur says on this issue of maintenance of individuality in the final stage. Let's turn our attention to that beautiful speech which my Thakur delivered on 2nd September 1985. My Thakur says there, which I have uttered some time back, that বিবেচনা রইল, দর্শন রইল, স্পর্শন রইল, স্বাদ রইল, ধ্বনি রইল, এগুলোকে চাবি দিয়ে মেরে দিয়ে বডিটাকে ফেলে দিয়ে ছেড়ে দাও, এটাই আত্মা. Now, whenever one speaks of vivechana, the power to discriminate, there's this aspect of will force which crops up and which can be associated only with the idea of individuality. Okay? If there's no individuality or personal identity, there's no question of will force, and when there's will force, there there's this power to discriminate, or the what Thakur says as vivechana. So the most profound part in my Thakur's description of Atma is in the acceptance of Atma's individuality in its ultimate state of enlightenment or nirvana. What I mean to say that Thakur has sincerely and seriously accepted the concept of individuality or the maintenance of personal identity at the high stage of enlightenment. This is where my Thakur's idea is also so fresh and new and unique from all other prevalent spiritual traditions. The sense of individuality, the sense of independent identity is required in order to execute the power of discrimination or in my Thakur's word, the concept of Vivechana to remain operative. Okay? My Thakur sees every soul as the potential ultimate seed of the universe, which is capable of blooming into the highest potential of the universe, and it can even get bigger in power than the present universe. As the sapling, from a mother tree can grow up into a much bigger tree, even bigger than its own mother from which it has originated. Likewise, any seed of the universe can not only equal the universe, but is capable of overgrowing the mother universe from which it is born. This process is there only to facilitate the entire governance of the universe. This is according to Thakur. So beautiful. The extinguishing of individuality either in Nirvana of Buddhism or in Enlightenment of Advaita Vedanta don't speak of a rational, coherent, sensible and intelligent consciousness as the Param Brahma, as both the Buddhists and the Advaita Vedantis can't provide a reasonable purpose behind the creation. Okay? But Thakur sees a profound purpose behind the entire creation, and when the creation we see is so painstakingly meticulous, showing great attention to every detail, being so careful, being so precisely attentive to even the tiniest bit of its structure and operation, then all this glory of precision and perfection without any purpose is extremely hard to digest, isn't it? Okay. Now, in order to maintain the will force or Ichha Shakti of the Shukkha Sharir, what my Thakur suggests is consolidation of all the Vastukana or the subtle particles from which the subtle body or the Shukkha Sharir is made of. Going back to the example of the container and the water, if it is possible to freeze the water into ice, then it will take the shape of the container, and then it doesn't need the help of the container to act on its own. Okay? A better example which my Thakur often gave was that of milk instead of water in the container. If the milk in the container is churned into butter, then the concentrated solidified butter floats on the surface of that milk. And in this way, the Shukkha Sharir can exist unhindered, breaking the chain of further births and deaths. Now, what is the process for this to happen? My Thakur suggests a very easy way of remaining close to my Thakur. Now, in the process of the Shukkha Sharir consolidation, my Thakur has suggested a cumulative operation of as many as possible Shukkha Sharir Vastukonas, or say subtle body particles. I just have a slightly different take from what my Thakur has suggested. In order to maintain the consolidated existence of the Shukkha Sharir, it is required that very many particles should come together. This is a precariously balanced state which isn't at all in a state of equilibrium. We have already seen in the maintenance of the physical body or the Sthula Sharir that so many supports from different corners and so many conditions need to be strictly fulfilled in order for the physical body to remain in good shape and state. In the case of the maintenance of the Shukkha Sharir, my Thakur has also used the same pattern of cumulative support, of collective support from many subtle body particles. I have this opinion that there is a state within the seed of our consciousness which, when developed, will help us to maintain our individual identity without the help from even a single other particle of this universe.